Godzilla King of the Monsters is directed by Michael Daugherty and stars Millie Bobby Brown, Kyle Chandler, Vera Farmiga, and Ken Watanabe. Monarch faces off against a battery of god-sized monsters, including the mighty Godzilla, who collides with Mothra, Rodan, and his ultimate nemesis, the three-headed dragon, King Ghidorah. Now, when they first announced a Godzilla 2, I wanted so bad for Rodan, for Mothra, and for Ghidorah to appear as the next few monsters. They listened to me. They listened to my fan mail. They listened to my texts all over the Godzilla trailers saying, hey, I want Ghidorah, I want Rodan, I want Mothra, I want them now in this movie. And it came true. And when I first watched it, I was like, oh my goodness, this was so fucking awesome. But a lot of people seem to be divided on this film. A lot of people didn't like the movie. Some people really enjoyed the film, but there isn't a clear consensus really. There is no one objective group of people that are saying that the movie is this. It's divided. It's probably the most divisive film in the entire MonsterVerse. Having rewatched it last night, what are my thoughts on it after all these years, after I first saw it in theaters? Well, I think this film still holds up pretty well. I think it is a very fun Godzilla film with a lot to offer. But let's get my problems out of the way first. For one, the human characters. They're definitely the most interesting out of the entire MonsterVerse, but still, many of the side characters that are not returning or the main characters are weak and forgettable, disposable, and I wouldn't care less if they got eaten by any of the monsters on screen. As for the returning characters like the General and Serizawa and his assistant, I think they're really entertaining. Dr. Serizawa has a lot more to do in this film as a character, and I really like what they did with him and his relationship to Godzilla, and how he basically is willing to give everything in order for Godzilla to live and to defeat Ghidorah. And I really empathize with his character trying to do that and trying to keep Monarch afloat. He is probably the most interesting character here and the one that I cared for the absolute most. And it's good that he is throughout most of the runtime of this film, as he's the one that I've been rooting for this entire time. As well as with Kyle Chandler, he has a little bit less to do than Serizawa, but his character is still overall nice and entertaining, and Kyle Chandler does a good job in the role. My only problem is that he seems a little bit too perfect in his decisions. Everything he says is the right thing. He knows what's going on with the plot. There's no moment, almost no moment at least, where he seems wrong apart from his judgment against Godzilla. But as for decision making for the plot, doesn't seem to make any sort of mistakes. But his character development from disliking Godzilla to eventually accepting him as this protector of his world is nice enough, but is still bare bones in comparison to Serizawa. As for his wife, played by Vera Farmiga, I understand what the filmmakers are trying to do with her. I appreciate it. I just don't think they stuck the landing due to the amount of people that have died at her hands because of the idea of trying to release all these monsters out into the ecosystem to try and restore balance. It's definitely crazy now nowhere, but I felt like they should have kept her as a villain going crazy instead of going for a redemption arc. It would have made the family drama a lot more tragic and a lot more investing. But all in all, Vera Farmiga does a good job in the role. I just didn't like the way her character was written. It just felt very lackluster, and I didn't care for her at all. Millie Bobby Brown plays the daughter here, and she probably has the least amount to do in this family as a character, apart from doing something for the plot later on. Throughout the film, she's just there in the background and doesn't really have much of a plot going on with her apart from her confliction between her parents' side of the good side and the bad side. Like, it's really not much going on with her, and I felt like this movie underutilized her, but still, Brown does a really good job in the role and gives a good performance. So while there is a lot going on with the human characters and they're definitely the most interesting in this MonsterVerse, they definitely have a lot of problems that affect the story and pacing quite a bit. And while they don't really drag the pacing down that much, you could definitely feel it at times when we focus too much on either side characters or characters we just don't like, which leads to the villains feeling pretty lackluster in this film. But I would be lying if I said that I still didn't enjoy the characters overall. Like, they're still fine enough and they serve the plot well enough for the monster fights to happen, and the monsters themselves are what saved this film. I love everything they did with Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan kind of. Rodan kind of has like the short end of the stick here. He's like the Yamcha of this entire film. But all in all, the monsters here are absolutely amazing. Godzilla is still threatening, imposing, godlike. I love the way they portrayed him and gave him new abilities, and we learn more about his history, which makes him an even more interesting character here. And the fact that they gave him a lot more screen time, give him a lot more scenes to do things here, just makes him all the more entertaining to watch. And every time he's on screen, there's always something cool happening, even if it's with some of the main characters he sometimes interacts with. But what I love most about Godzilla was how the film was able to flesh out his rivalry between King Ghidorah. We learned that Ghidorah is like a frozen dragon in Antarctica, and then the bad guys want to release him as part of their plan to replenish the entire Earth. They think he's just another monster from this world, but they were dead wrong. By releasing Ghidorah, they released a demonic entity unlike any other. He wiped the floor with Godzilla in their first encounter in Antarctica, then proceeds to go to another small town where there's a volcano and proceeds to fight Rodan there and win and take over the entire Earth. Godzilla tried to stop him, and then the humans try to intervene again and make things worse, which leads to the discovery that Ghidorah is not of this world. He is in fact an alien monster sent here to take it over and make it his own. Which is why the hydrogen bomb, that is a nice little nod from the original film, did not work on him and instead worked on Godzilla, which again, another nice nod to the original movie. This is where Mothra and Rodan comes into play as supporting characters. Rodan is trying to seek a leader throughout this entire film. Because Godzilla is beaten and the orca is simulating a call from an alpha male, he proceeds to think of Ghidorah as that new alpha, considering he came out on top. And so now all these monsters are being unleashed. Ghidorah is calling for all of them, and all the entire world is being destroyed by these titans, 17 and counting to be exact. And there's a lot of destruction being caused here, and it's so much fun to watch. So our main characters realize their mistake. They try to get a nuclear bomb down in the bottom of the sea where Godzilla is residing and trying to replenish his health, but it's not going to be in time before the entire world goes extinct. So Serizawa sacrifices himself and replenishes the energy of Godzilla, maybe a little bit too well, because throughout the final fight, when Godzilla is now replenished and is able to get back on his feet, he is trying to save that energy long enough before it goes thermonuclear, but is still on his base state. But this fight is epic, it is grand. I love all the shots that they're able to utilize here. But earlier on, we also get glimpses of another monster named Mothra, who is basically the queen of the monsters. We first see her as a giant ass caterpillar as she is trying to basically evolve throughout the entire film. She goes into a waterfall to cocoon, which she comes out as a giant ass moth, as her name states. And she is what led the humans to where Godzilla is residing at the bottom of the ocean, literally showing the human race the light, the way, basically. And she then aids Godzilla into his fight as she helps restore his health, helps fight against Rodan and Ghidorah, and puts up a good enough fight against Rodan considering that she came out on top. But with her being a more peaceful monster, she is no match against Ghidorah, which is why she had to die when she had to protect Godzilla at his lowest moment in this final battle. This, however, gives Godzilla the exact right amount of charge he needs to fight up against Ghidorah, as the human characters are trying to lead Ghidorah away from Godzilla, giving him enough time to basically replenish his health up from the final battle. He goes thermonuclear, basically its version of Super Saiyan. Mothra's call just beams out of Godzilla as Ghidorah burns to death, while Vera Farmiga dies somewhere, and I didn't give a shit about her deal or any of the humans right now. Godzilla is screwing Ghidorah up bad. He is annihilating him, levels the entire city, and blows his head off from his mouth. And all the Titans now bow to Godzilla. Title drop, and oh my god, the monster stuff here is just everything I want to see. The plot line with the monsters actually had them go through a bit of character development, actually had them feel like they have personality. There's a lot at stake here. I just loved everything with the monsters, and it all was clear, made enough sense to me plot wise, and it was just so much fun to watch. And Michael Daughtry did a really good job with the action sequences. The visual effects here are also really good. And while Antarctica was a little bit lit too darkly for me, everything else about the film looked absolutely incredible. I love the way the monsters are presented as titanic figures here. While not as good as how Gareth Edwards was able to handle the monster scale in his version of Godzilla, it is still really epic here in the sense of scale, a sense of threat, a sense of urgency and tension. It is still just as prevalent here as it was in the previous film. This is overall a really fun Godzilla film, and while it has fun enough characters, I guess, like characters you can at least somewhat care about, it's really the monster stuff that really steal the show here. And because it is a lot more prevalent here than in Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, I had a lot of fun with this one. This is probably the most fun out of all the MonsterVerse films, in my humble opinion. It is definitely a blockbuster to behold. Overall, Godzilla King of the Monsters is a really fun Godzilla film, and I'm going to give it a B+. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time.